Hi everyone and welcome back to another video. In fact, this is my first workshop video and I'm going to take you through how to do a 50-hour service on a suspension fork. Now my particular fork is a Rockshox Lyric Select Plus, but the process for a 50-hour service is pretty much the same across a wide range of forks. So, I'll see you after the intro. Okay, so what tools am I going to need to get this service done? Well, for my particular fork, I'm going to need a 5mm Allen key. I'm also going to need a 2.4mm Allen key. I'm going to need a mallet or a hammer with a soft end, a shock pump, obviously a seal kit specific for my fork, a couple of clean cloths, a tool for reseating the seals, the correct weight fork oil, some isopropyl alcohol, and an optional drumstick, which I'll explain later. So 50-hour service essentially involves removing the lowers from the forks. The first thing I've got to do is remove the brake caliper. So let's get into that. We've got to take a few more things off as well, such as the front wheel and any clips which attach the brake hose to the front fork. Now you can remove the fork from the bike to do this, and if you're going to service the headset and a few other things on the bike, then obviously it's worth doing that. I'm going to leave the fork attached as I don't need to service my headset, that's all feeling absolutely fine, so I'm going to do it with the fork in place on the bike. Now before we go any further, we've got to make sure we've taken the air out of the fork so it is not pressurised. I'm going to do it using a shock pump as I want to record what my pressure is, just to make it a bit quicker for setting up later on when we reassemble everything. I just want to point out to only attempt this service yourself if you are competent with tools and you feel confident you can complete the task. Okay, that should be all the pressure out now, but just to double check, I'm going to remove the valve core just to make sure that all of the air is definitely out of the fork. There we go, valve core is out, there is definitely no air left in this fork, so we're good to go. Next thing to do is to remove all of the rebound by turning it all the way to the fast setting. And when I do that, I'm going to count the amount of clicks, again just to make it easy to set up later on when we reassemble everything. 13 clicks, all the rebound is off, the fork is now in the fastest rebound setting. After we've removed all of the rebound and put it on the fastest setting, we've got to remove the rebound adjuster. So we do that by using the 2.4mm Allen key, and we undo this grub screw. Only a few turns, just loose enough so this pulls out the bottom of the fork. So by removing the rebound adjuster, it's revealed this Allen key, and we've got another one on this leg of the fork. And what we need to do now is loosen these Allen keys by about 3 or 4 turns, and then we've got to shock the bolts with a hammer. That's what the mallet's for. When we shock the bolts, it should separate these bolts from the insides of the legs, from the dampener and the air cartridge on the other leg. Now this is potentially where things get a little bit messy, because the old fork oil is going to leak out of the holes left behind by these bolts. So it's always a good idea to have a bowl or an oil pan on the floor to catch that oil. Here we go, I'm going to undo these Allen keys on the bottom of the legs. And then it's time to shock the bolts to free them. I'm hitting the bolts directly with my mallet. If you're worried you might damage the bolts, you can actually leave the Allen key in and strike the Allen key instead of the bolts. Then we can carry on winding them off. All being well, if I've done this correctly, the lowers should just slide off the stanchions. If you feel resistance and the lowers don't come off, don't force them. It's okay, we can do something about it. No, we need to put those bolts back in and shock them again. This can happen if we didn't undo the bolts enough before shocking them. Simply put them back in and do it again. So now, this time, hopefully, and there we go. One set of fork lowers removed. So if we have a look at what comes in the new seal kit, we have got 2 brand new dust seals. We have got some foam wipers. We've got a new sag ring and we've got some replacement crush washers which go on the bolts on the bottom of the legs. In a 50-hour service, it's not always necessary to replace these dust seals. You can inspect the ones that are on the bike, and if they look in good condition, then by all means you can keep them there. Same with these foam wipers. If they look in okay condition, you can take out the old ones, clean them up and re-lubricate them. However, my bike is overdue this service, so I'm going to be replacing the seals and the foam wipers. So if we take a little look at what we've got inside the fork, this is a pick, it's another tool that we need, which I forgot to mention earlier. We've got the bushings, which are these white bits here. Be very careful not to damage those. We've got the foam wipers, which are just here. Mine aren't white anymore, they're black. They're absolutely filthy. And then we've got the seal. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to remove these old foam wipers. And we're going to do that just by putting a pick in there and taking them out. Let's take the one out the other side. Be very careful not to scratch anything. And there we go, we've got those out. Now it's time to remove the seals. Okay, so to remove the seals, which are in there quite tight, I've got a 9mm spanner. I'm going to be very careful not to scratch any of the inner leg, and I'm just going to wedge this underneath the seal and then lever it. Oh, that actually came out a lot easier than I thought it would. Out of the fork. Let's turn this around into the other side. What's the chances this one comes out just as easy? Nope. There we go. Out it comes. So this is what we've got now. We've removed the seals, we've removed the foam wipers, and all we've got in there now is some old oil. So to clean that up, we're going to leave it soak in some isopropyl alcohol. So we're just going to spray that in. And while we're letting that do its thing, we're going to clean up these. This is a really good opportunity to inspect your stanchions, make sure there's no scratches or abrasions, and give them a real thorough good clean. So there's something else that you need, which I forgot to mention, and that's just a little bowl. Because what we need to do is soak these foam washers in some of the oil. Now make sure you get the right oil for your fork. If you download the service manual for your particular fork, it tells you which weight to get. So my fork is the Lyric Select Plus, and I need 0 weight 30. So I've got the Rockshox oil here, and what I'm going to do is pour a small amount of this into this bowl and soak the foam washers in the oil. There is a method of doing this where you can put the foam washers in the fork completely dry and then using a syringe to apply the oil afterwards. But I want to make sure I do this right. This is the first time I'm doing this job, so I want to make sure that the foam washers are really well coated. I'm trying not to be too wasteful with this oil, so I'm going to leave them in there to soak that up.
Now, have any of you guessed what the optional drumstick is for? No? Well, I need a way of cleaning inside these stanchions, and I don't want to put anything metal or anything sharp in there, so I've attached a cloth to a drumstick. They've been soaking in isopropyl alcohol for a little while now, so I'm just going to give them a good wipe out inside. There we go. I'll just repeat on the other side. So now it's time to fit the dust seals into the fork lowers. And here they are. Here's my new set of dust seals. They've come with a little bit of grease already on them, but I will apply some more. I'll do that when they're in place after I've fitted them. Now, I've been looking around to see how people fit these, and I've seen a few different solutions. Some people put them in the freezer just to shrink them a little bit to pop them in. Some people wrestle them in and squeeze them in with their thumbs. I bought a tool. I like having the right tool for the job. I bought this. It's a pretty much universal dust seal setter. So you've got 32mm on this end, and then this end of it will cater for 34, 35 and 36mm. My forks have 35mm lowers. So the way it works, we place the dust seal on the appropriate end. So in my case, on the 35mm end, we put it like so, and then we can place this on top of the fork, and then we can use a mallet to drive this down into the fork lower. So let's give this a go. That's in. That's £13 well spent. So you need to make sure you apply a nice bit of grease to the inside of these seals. You can't just use any grease. You can't just use something like some park tool grease, for instance, like this. You've got to use specific suspension grease. Now, SRAM do two different types. They do the SRAM butter and they do the SRAM dynamic seal grease. It actually says on this for Reasshox service. And before any of you jump on the comments and say you shouldn't be using that on the forks should use SRAM butter, this is for the Reasshox. It actually says in the service manual you can use this for the forks or SRAM butter. You can look that up yourself, it definitely says that. So I'm going to apply some of this to the inside of these seals. And now it's time to fit the foam washers. So here they are. I'm not sure if you can see this on the camera, but they're definitely a different colour now. Lots of oil saturated into those. The foam washers fit in that gap there, the little gap just underneath the dust seal, where the stanch, the lower leg steps out a little bit. There's a little lip for it to sit on. So here it is. I'm just going to squeeze that in there. I have to put the camera down in a second so I can use both hands. Yep, got to put the camera down. I've got the one side in, I'm going to put the other side in. Now I'm going to leave the camera where it is. Hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm doing. So I'm just placing these in by hand, just trying to guide them in, just fit it underneath that seal there. There we go. Foam washers in place, well saturated in oil. So now it's time to start reassembling, and the first thing we need to do is put those fork lowers back onto the uppers. So let's get that done. You've got to be careful when you do this, we don't want to damage anything, and we're just going to carefully guide the one side on, and then once the one side is on, we can come over here and do the other, and we can just slide those back up. Now when you slide them up, you'll hear, maybe feel, the lowers hitting the bottom of the dampener and the air spring. So you want to push them up till they meet and then just pull them away slightly, because now we've got to put fresh oil in the bottom. But before we do that, we need to tilt the bike so that the oil doesn't come leaking out. So I need to adjust the stand. Now again, this is where it's important to consult the service manual for your particular fork, because not only will it tell you which weight oil you need, it will also tell you how much oil you need to put in the bottom of each leg. And on my fork it is 10 mil in each side. So I'm going to measure at 10 mil on the syringe. There we go. Now I'm going to put that into the first leg. So now it's time to replace the bolts on the bottom of the legs. That way all the new oil will stay in there. I am, however, just going to put the tiniest amount of park tool grease on the threads just to stop them binding. This part of the fork picks up a lot of crap, and I just want to make sure that they don't seize. There's the slightest little bit of park tool grease on there. And it's really important that you put these to the correct torque, which should be 7.3 Newton meters. So it's important to use a torque wrench. So I'm just pushing the forks on, pushing the lowers on, so that the outers meet the bottom of the inner legs. Wind that on hand tight for now. And then it's a case of getting the torque wrench to do it up. Okay, so before I do any more reassembly, I'm just going to give it all a good clean down with some isopropyl alcohol. Not forgetting to put the rebound adjuster back on the bottom, and doing up the grub screw and put my rebound back in. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 13. Before I go any further, I'm going to put the air back in the fork. Now, if you didn't do this already earlier on in the process, make sure you put the valve core back in.
Just a couple of other small jobs. Let's refit this brake caliper. And then to realign the caliper, we simply pull the front brake on. And while the front brake is held on, we tighten up the bolts. And there we go. 50-hour service complete. So if you attempt your own 50-hour service after watching this video, please let us know how you got on in the comments down below. If you've liked this video, if you found it useful, please click the picture of the thumbs up, give the video a like. If you haven't already, please click the mountains down below to subscribe. It really does help the channel out. And have a click over there to have a look at some of our other videos. And we'll see you soon.